It's me again with part 2 of a small painting of the Setauket Methodist Church, begun at another time and going to continue now for the final doing of it. This is a lovely little well, it's a decent-sized structure, but it's compared to an awful lot of the churches that are getting put up today, it's actually probably considered a small church. But it's a country church, very, very New England, and very picturesque, as it were. I began it by drawing it rather extensively and then putting in the tones, which means that you go from back to front and work your way towards the foreground as you do it, and hopefully it will resemble what you sat and diligently tried to imitate, which is all this is. This is an imitation of life. Okay, well, behind me over here, let me just for a moment talk in case anybody saw the first program and saw this painting behind me. It's a painting of Niagara Falls, which I did 2 weeks ago when I went up to Niagara Falls and found myself totally amazed at the at the falls. Not the entire world has been amazed at the falls, and I'm a Johnny-come-lately, but nevertheless I did this painting sitting right there by the edge of the falls and trying to comprehend what I was seeing, but I just thought maybe I ought to explain why there's this painting. This, by the way, is not a stormy cloud. This is a continuously present mist that comes up from this amazing water activity that takes place up there. So I'm an itinerant painter running around the country painting things that are interesting, and also coming on Long Island painting things for you to be able to go out and check me out, because you could in fact go and find this church at this particular place and see whether or not you would like to tackle the business of doing one also. I began it, as I say, with the background, which is the way I always do it, and now I'm going to get down to the business of continuing and hopefully get as much done as possible as the program begins to come to an end. The roof can go on now. It is a sort of a dark and sort of indistinct grayish tone, probably one of those shingles that you find on ordinary buildings. It has virtually no importance except that it's got to be the color that it is in real life. I'm using a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of Prussian blue, and some oil to make it flow somewhat more easily. It is it's got a little bit of light on it, therefore it's not as black as it seems on the monitor. If you were there, you would realize that the sun has played a little bit of a job on this roof and made it not quite as black as it seems. I like to be able to emphasize also to work from life. A lot of people don't work from life. They're perfectly content to copy pictures or to work out of their heads, like Mr. Ross suddenly gets an idea that he's going to paint something out of his head, and he doesn't. He paints it, and there's no reference. You can't possibly figure out what he's doing. He's all coming out of his head. But here at least there is some reference material whereby you can check it out and correct it if it's not right. Here is the mystery of transferring the third dimension to the second dimension, which is what this is. This canvas here is the second dimension, and what you're looking at is the third dimension. That's where the whole challenge comes, and that's why painters paint, to see whether or not that kind of an illusion can be done without relying upon well, incorrect information that you get if you try to remember what you're looking at. All right, this is a white church. Isn't that interesting? Because it doesn't look white on this side. This side is definitely unwhite. It is gray and quite dark gray, as a matter of fact, and I believe that this tone I believe that that's probably as dark a gray as it can get. Maybe that's a little bit too dark. So let me correct it. I'm going to use something called drying oil. It's called archival oil. It's extremely useful. It makes the paint flow. It is not as expensive as the other medium that I used to use called Marager medium. The Marager medium that I used to use is now almost not available anymore because it has lead in it. And the people who used to make it are now no longer willing to boil all this stuff that has lead in it. And I don't blame them, and I believe that there is life beyond Marager medium. Namely, it's in this stuff called an archival oil. Here is the mystery of a white church building that is, and I'm applying gray, rather intense gray on the shady side. Something that possibly you may find interesting if you ever go out there to paint yourself, that you will see that the illusion that takes place, you look at it and you say, that's a white building. How is it possible that I have to mix all this dark gray? So that's why it's fun to get out there and to be present when you discover these things, that your mind is active at all times when you're doing all this, because you're finding out things that you didn't know before. I always find that when I'm out there observing things and doing my thing, as it were, I discover a great deal not only about my ability to be observant, but also about what I'm seeing and what I may not have seen before. I have pointed things out to people of certain areas in the world where they've lived there all their lives, and they said they never noticed that. And I always say that's probably because you never sat down to try and paint it. If you try and paint it, you'll find that you are discovering new things almost constantly. The application of this gray, I've almost done the shady side of this building, and I think that even as you look at it from a distance, you'll admit that the gray is very intense. And here is the thing that tells you what time of day it is. It's a little bit before noon. That shadow is doing that, and that's another plus for the business of being out there working from life. You find that you're conscious of whether or not that shadow is correct, and when you continue to paint for 2 or 3 hours and that shadow has changed, you're liable to panic because that's the way the sun has a weird way of doing that. It makes things change. Here is the darkest, really the darkest part of this shady side of the building, because it is not only on the shady side of the building, but it's also on the side that is being almost totally faded out by the presence of this huge tree. So this is actually almost as dark as the tree itself over here. The archway underneath this entrance of this building is very dark, and all you have to do is to suggest that it's an arch. A little bit later on we might be able to get involved in some heavier detail, but for now it is just going to be a suggestion of the arch. As you see, I'm using a rather large brush, but I'm using it sideways. And so when you say that you need a small brush, you don't. You can use a large brush, but you use it in a different direction. The architectural points of this church are really quite wonderful. As I said in the broadcast number 1 of this study, is that the simplicity with which this church was designed is a tribute to the fact that whatever it is that the Methodist doctrine is, to keep things simple, they have managed to do it in almost every one of their structures. I find that whenever I see a very pleasing and very, very simple architectural, not that this is simple, I mean it must have been very difficult to build, but the simplicity of design without any frou-frou and without any overdoing of the arches and so on, you'll find that there's a nice sort of well, you might call it a sort of an early Yankee quality to it. There's some nice detail work on this building, which of course is not necessary in a painting. A painting should have some detail, but it shouldn't be bogged down with too much detail. Then it begins to look like an architectural rendering, which I'm not interested in doing. I'm using something called Van Dyke Brown, which is used by a lot of other people on the networks with their art shows, but I use it strictly as a toner. I do not use it as a color. These little windows here that are that look dark from a distance have to be put in just as little dark lines, and then the details can be put in somewhat later. They have diamond-shaped forms to them. The four windows on the east side of this building are not arched. They are just long, nice dark rectangles, 4 of them. You must count windows on things like these structures, because it is important that the portrait of this building be accurate. Because you may be recording it as a recording of this particular structure, and then who knows, it could someday come down, as things have a tendency to do, and then your painting will be the one accurate recording, and if it's got 5 windows, then it won't be an accurate recording of it. Underneath it, it has a little shadow aside from their sills, which is probably not necessary to do any more than that. And then way off into the dark recesses, there are some windows in this little bay window that is there, sort of hidden in the distance, hidden behind the building. I believe this is the offices of the pastor or something back here. I'm not quite sure, but I'm guessing at it. The need to be accurate in architectural renderings is obvious. You don't want it to be a fantasy, and the only way you can get that accuracy is by being there and doing it. We have a few close-ups of this building that we take for reference, and I'm afraid that some of the gentle people who belong to this church are going to be a little concerned that the paint on the front needs to be repaired and needs to be scraped and repainted. I'm sure they know it, and I'm sure that it's in the process. The business of Niagara Falls and going out and painting things, I had to travel a long distance. I had another reason for going there, but I took the opportunity of being there to do a painting of the falls. But the nice part about finding the picturesqueness of where you live is that it's within a matter of hours in an automobile. It can also be combined with outings of other kinds. So now here I'm going to, I'm not going to talk much. Just let me give you a good dark line on the shadow side of this spire. The spire has got many planes to it. I believe it's divided into 3 visible planes, which means that it's more than likely a 6-sided spire. And that's important to know also. I'm going to put the pure white in with a nice clean brush for the rest of that tower. Whatever that tower is. It's not it's the steeple. The spire is above the steeple, and I think that I forget what this is called because I'm not a trained architect. But I'm putting the pure white in because it is bathed in sun, and there's something so intriguing about a pure white building in the sunshine. It becomes even whiter than you think on the white side, and then even darker than you think on the dark side. So go on out there and find things to do like this. It's quite a wonderful experience. It'll give you a whole new ability to see. And there's one thing that I cannot do is to make you see, but I can suggest that you get out there and look. And looking is half the fun. There are some details in this building, namely that around some of these windows you will find that there is some there is an arch above these windows, and it's not in pure white, but I'm putting it in pure white right now, and then you would lower those values later with a little bit of an overglaze, with a glaze. But the windows are divided into sort of sections. And it doesn't have to be extremely accurate. It can just be suggested what these shapes are. Naturally, in the short space of 1 hour, I'm not going to be able to do exactly all the details that I want, but I want to show you how I go about it, and also how you must refine these things at a later date. The refining of a painting is important. I'm going to break now for just a second, so if you're still interested, come on back. back when I come back. I'm back again, and for the final push towards the completion of this study of the Methodist Church in Setauket. I find that of course, the intrigue that I have about doing these things is because I'm a landscape painter, but it's also that because I'm interested in buildings and the things that that history tells you about buildings and the timing on it. This building was built over 120 years ago. It's dated 1870, 120 years ago. So it has not only survived a great deal of mankind, as it were, and also storms and God knows what else. The spire has been replaced a number of times, but it is still all sorts of wonderful things take place in buildings such as this. And one of the things that I like to find is that when I'm doing these paintings, I go and I sort of inform myself about the history of these buildings. The people are, of course, more than anxious to tell you about them, and there is a certain pride in maintaining an old building. The new ones, I suppose, are okay, and they're needed because also we need more. Well, we need more of everything, but I think in architecture, too many of them are being torn down to make way for ones that are certainly not as quality conscious nor as interesting architecturally. So up here in the tower, I'm just going to make a vague suggestion that there is a louvered belfry up here, in which there is probably a bell, which I'm not sure still operates, but it was put there. The belfry has got little louvers up there, and it's on all four sides of the building. They go by sometime, and you'll find that these louvers you're able to see through these sometimes if the light is right. There are two of these, and then there is a shadow being cast from these nice little cornices that hang over, and when I refine this, and this painting is going to have a little, it's going to go somewhere. There's something taking place whereby this painting is going to be in on it, and so I will refine the details, and then I'll tell you where it went. Well, here we have, with very little time remaining. Here's the general feeling of the way I will take out an awful lot of those lines. Those lines are too dark, and maybe as the program progresses and I have a little bit more time to fool with it, I will take some of them out. Those lines are too harsh, but they're there for my information. These are wonderful boxwoods that are so incredibly well maintained. Somebody in this congregation is very concerned with these very beautiful and valuable boxwoods. I think that if you, some people took some boxwoods down recently down in Virginia where I lived. I couldn't believe that anybody would have done anything quite as traumatic as to remove boxwoods. They take a long time to grow, and when they do grow, there's virtually nothing that looks better than these sunstruck boxwoods. And of course, the people here at this this church have decided that they're going to take remarkable care of them, and so they have. Do go by and see them. They're wonderful to see, especially in a day when there are so many places that have minimal amount of planting, probably because maintenance being what it is, the people are avoiding planting wonderful things. Here's the dark side of this one in the front. And it has and then there's a very pale top to it, and I'm going to sort of exaggerate that pale top because that makes for drama. And then there's a little dome of a tree behind it that they have managed to keep beautifully rounded. That's another thing to see. Whether you think it's worth going out of your way to see something as silly as a manicured domed tree, then so be it. But my advice is go and see these wonderful bushes. They are indicative of something that is not seen everywhere these days. We are living in an age when maintenance of anything is sometimes sacrificed for time and money. Pity, but that's the way it is. I've got to put the background in behind that fence that I talked about in part 1, and so I'm going to eliminate the drawing of the fence entirely, put some sap green and a little bit of Van Dyke brown back here, so that the little fence background is ready to receive the little vertical stripe, the little vertical strokes that the fence is going to tell you about. Here, the lawn is also another one of these wonderfully cared for places, and it can be the yellow-green that comes directly out of the tube, because there's something really very fresh about a nice pale green expanse of lawn. I'm not always in favor of tremendous lawns, but when they're in a nice controlled quantity. I mean, golf courses to me are absolutely out of control, and but this is a nice sort of a plate on which this church can sit and be very dramatic. Here's the shadow of that bush. It's the same color as the bush, and it runs right down the hill. This also tells you what time of day it is. Something that I would never have been able to memorize in my fondest dreams, and here it is right in front of me. So as I've said to you before, painting from life is easier than trying to remember what you see. Painting from life is definitely the way to go, in my opinion. There is another great large boxwood coming here, interrupting the entrance to this church, which incidentally has a little red door back there, and I will put that in eventually. This tree, and before time really wears out, is another one of those wonderful Norway maples, which a lot of people feel that have intruded on the American treescapes, because they do take over. But here, this is in the front of this church, and it really has grown, and grown really enough to hide a good deal of the facade of the building. However, when they're planted, and if they are not pruned and kept back, they manage to become as big as the building against which they stand. I think that you'll agree that the mass of this huge tree in back is almost as big as the mass of the church. I realized that the other day when I was looking at another one, and the tree that grows in front of our house in Virginia is probably twice the size of the house. Something of an astonishing tree. Here is there's a very short time left, but I do want to once again point out that painters are people who record things, and namely a scene like this is a recording of a place. The little gray cement steps, and you can barely see them because the cars are always in front of them, but they are a gray cement step. I'm sure that they started out as something else. They probably weren't always gray. They may have been brick at one time. But over the years, these have been turned out to be little cement steps. And there is another bush next to them. That seems to have disappeared in the traffic, but I believe that it's all sort of here, sitting on the edge of this on the edge of the little hillside on which this church is sitting. I think that doing these things with such rapidity will give you some feeling that you have to be a whiz and be able to do these things extremely quickly. That helps. But I do this in a very short space of time as a demonstration. The people who decide that they're going to paint these things can in fact go back at the same time of day and work on these things with a little bit more concentration on detail. Here is that 11 o'clock in the morning type of shadow, noon type shadow here of this bush. Tells a story. All right, this is obviously, let me do those strokes of the fence that I've been talking about, because the point is, if I talk about something, I better jolly well deliver the goods. You get your brush filled with some extremely fluid color paint, and you have got the background prepared, and try, if you want to be absolutely accurate, to make your little fence pickets as accurate as you possibly can, hoping that they will in fact be a faithful rendering of the fence. It will keep going over here, but there is one little thing before we go. I would like to point out that this little dogwood is probably in the process is going to become very bright, and it's almost there. I'm not sure that the camera was able to pick it up, but I noticed when I saw this that there is a possibility of a very bright orange display of a dogwood, just sort of in its early stages of life. This little dogwood is putting forth some sort of a pinkish toned leaves at this time of year that are probably going to turn much redder as the season progresses. And if you can check me out, maybe you'd like to see whether or not this little dogwood is in fact going to be as bright as I think it will be. In a couple of years it'll probably be huge, and I'll do another study of it. But anyway, I thought that I would bring out the last moment of this program to tell you that color is as intriguing as any landscape is going to be enhanced by the selection of the subject matter, and also by the color. And the color is only there if the sun is out. When the sun isn't out, landscapes become colorless. Naturally, whatever we see is because the sun has lit it. And so, try to find a sunny day. If you don't find a sunny day, paint anyway. Paint the dull day, and you'll learn something in that process as well. I'm going back, and then there's a cross line in the fence. Oh, you see me leaning over and trying to get things absolutely. This little cross line in the fence is probably going to tell you that that fence is now a fence. That's the small detail that you're going to have. Well, once again, I have run out of time. Certainly not out of chatter, because I seem to chatter at you endlessly during these programs. Here is the road, and I'll finish this someday and show it to you when it's done. Have not been able to incorporate it in this limited space of time. Anyway, I hope you liked it. It was somewhat tiring to have to talk all the time and do all this detail, but always fun. And this is part 2, the end and conclusion of the painting of the Methodist Church in Setauket on the hill. Tune in whenever you can. I'm going to try to come up with interesting things all the time, and if I don't, write to me and tell me that it's a bore. Bye-bye.